When people show you who they are, believe them the first time. Maya Angelou, hey guys, tonight on Revenge Stories TSA, we're diving into a quiet war fought in the silence of a lavender garden, and one without a single raised voice. This isn't a story about shouting, it's a story about standing your ground when everyone else expects you to bend. After the only person who truly loved her passed away, she found herself surrounded by those who smiled with their mouths and calculated with their eyes. But she remembered what he taught her, that roots matter more than flowers. Watch this story to the end. You'll feel every word. So before we begin, like the video and subscribe to help us reach 1,000 subscribers. It's your encouragement that gives this channel life and helps me create deeper, better stories for you. Now, take a breath, dim the lights, and let's begin. The hospital walls hum like an old refrigerator, faint, constant, and different. You're sitting by the bed in room 204, fingers laced through the hand of the only man who ever saw you, clearly your grandfather, Walter James Bennett. His skin is paper-thin now, liver-spotted and fragile, but the grip he gives you in his final hours still carries the quiet strength of a man who once built this whole house with his own two hands. The machines beep steadily until they don't. You know the moment he leaves, not because a nurse says anything, not because the heart monitor flattens, but because his fingers go still in yours, like he gave you everything he had left in that last squeeze. And then this silence, not a violent exit, just the kind that empties a room without touching a thing. You want to scream, but you don't, because you know he wouldn't want that. He always said pain isn't weakness, it's a signal. So you breathe. You breathe so hard your chest aches. You let go of his hand gently and stand up just as Brandon walks in. Your husband of 9 years, the man you once thought would carry your grief with you. He's holding a Starbucks cup in one hand and his phone in the other. Is it over, Ned? He asks, not unkind, not cruel, just procedural. You nod and he looks down at his screen. Dodgers are up 3 runs, he says absently, then takes a sip. The coffee smells like hazelnut. The moment smells like nothing. You look at him, and for the first time in your marriage, you feel truly alone. Not because he didn't love your grandfather, but because he never understood what Grandpa Walter was to you. That man didn't just raise you after your mother left. He rooted for you when no one else even showed up to the game. He taught you how to fix a faucet, bake cornbread, and plant lavender in poor soil. He told you college wasn't about grades, it was about escape. He paid for your night classes when Brandon said it wasn't the right time financially, and now he's gone. And Brandon is refreshing ESPN. Do you want a minute alone? Brandon asks, already edging toward the hallway. You want to say yes, you want to scream yes, but you say, no, it's okay, because that's the woman they expect you to be. Polite, low maintenance, uncomplicated. As the nurse steps in to confirm the time of death, Brandon pockets his phone and shifts uncomfortably. Guess we should start calling people. People? You know what he means. His parents, his sister, the family that barely ever visited Walter, that made passive-aggressive jokes at Thanksgiving about that old man's backyard compost pile. You nod. Again, because what else can you do when your world has just cracked open and no one notices the sound? Later, as the body is taken and the hospital room clears, you pause by the window. Room 204 faces the parking lot, not the garden, but still you spot a single bloom of lavender pushing through the concrete near the fence. Late season, unlikely. You remember what Grandpa used to say when something grew in a place it wasn't supposed to? See that stubborn things always find their way through? You're like that kid. That flower becomes your anchor. Because in that moment, standing by the window while Brandon calls his sister to see if they're free for some kind of memorial, you understand something painful and permanent. You didn't just lose your grandfather, you lost the only real home you ever had. And you're not sure what hurts more, his absence, or the absence of anyone who noticed what he truly meant to you. 3 days later, you stand in the garden behind the chapel, holding a single stem of lavender. It's from your grandfather's own patch, the one he started behind the cottage in the foothills, where the bees always lingered too long, and the neighbors complained about the smell of dirt. He used to joke that lavender was stubborn like you, soft on the surface, but impossible to uproot without taking the whole plot with it. You arranged the memorial yourself. You pick the linen tablecloths, the ceramic urn, the navy blue ribbon around the folded veteran's flag. You chose the song Frank Sinatra's I'll Be Seeing You because Grandpa always whistled it when he cooked Sunday eggs. You printed little cards with his favorite quotes and the date of his passing, even included one with a photo of the two of you fishing when you were 9. He was smiling in that photo, teeth uneven, sun in his eyes, like he knew the world wasn't perfect, but showed up anyway. Brandon offered to call the florist, but even that he left to his sister Tiffany in the end. Now you watch as guests arrive in clusters. Most are neighbors, a few of Grandpa's old Navy buddies. Your coworker Melinda shows up with her wife and a homemade pear pie. Kevin the mailman, who used to sit on the porch for lemonade on hot days, stands in the back clutching a baseball cap like it's sacred. Then Brandon's family comes. His parents, Linda and Charles, step out of their SUV like they're attending a networking brunch. Linda wears a coral jacket and oversized sunglasses. Charles adjusts his tie as if someone's about to interview him. Tiffany follows behind stilettos, clicking on gravel, her expression blank. No one hugs you. No one even looks you in the eye. You nod in greeting. Linda mouths, so sorry, like she's reading it off a script. The service begins. The pastor says kind words. You manage to deliver your eulogy without choking, though your voice cracks when you mention the time Grandpa taught you to ride a bike by holding the seat and saying, I won't let go until you're ready to fall and get back up. Brandon stands beside you silent. When you finish, there's a polite pause, a cough, the rustling of a program dropped to the grass, but no applause, no murmur of appreciation, just Tiffany pulling out her phone like she's checking the time or Instagram. You stare at the crowd and feel the hot sting of invisibility. They are here, but not really. Not for you, not for him. You hold your composure until the pastor invites everyone for refreshments. That's when you see it. Linda leaning over the dessert table, posing with her cousin for a photo. They're standing next to the framed picture of your grandfather, both grinning. Her caption will probably be something like, beautiful day in the garden, as if this were a brunch with mimosas and quiche, not a farewell. You catch Brandon scrolling on his phone near the roses. You walk over. She's taking selfies, you whisper. He doesn't even look up. She's grieving in her own way. That's when something inside you hardens. Not like ice, like concrete. Later, you overhear Charles asking someone, so did he leave much behind? The cottage must be worth something now with the new zoning laws. Not what kind of man he was, not how Elise is holding up, just money, property, numbers. You return home that evening, exhausted, your body buzzing from holding back tears for too long. The house is too quiet. Brandon pours himself a glass of wine, turns on ESPN, and asks if you want Thai food. You shake your head. He shrugs. You find yourself back in Grandpa's room, the one that still smells faintly of cedar and old paperbacks. On his bedside table is his gardening hat. It has a stitch patch that reads Sunshine Rebel. He used to wear it every Saturday while tending to his tomatoes and muttering about gophers like they were criminal masterminds. You sit on the bed, hat in your lap. Then you do something unexpected. You laugh, just once, a bitter little sound, because if he were here, he'd say something dry like, didn't expect the send-off to come with a photo booth, did we? You lie back and close your eyes. You remember every morning he made you oatmeal before school, even when he had arthritis so bad he couldn't open the drawer. You remember how he kissed your forehead on your college graduation and whispered, you did it your way just like I hoped. And now you're lying alone in his empty room, the echo of Sinatra, still in your head while Brandon's family jokes about property value and cupcake frosting. You open your eyes, and in that still moment, staring at the ceiling, you realize something crystal clear. There are worse things than being alone. One of them is being surrounded by people who don't see you. The next morning, the group text pings on Brandon's phone. You don't read it, but the preview says, enough. Do you think Elise has access to the will yet? You hand him the phone. He glances at it and puts it face down without saying a word. You go outside to Grandpa's garden. The lavender hasn't been watered in days, but it's still holding on soft, upright, sure. You kneel down beside it, gently clear the dead leaves, press your fingers into the dirt. You whisper aloud, I see you. And for the first time in days, you feel seen too. It starts subtly, Quiet glances, side comments, the kind of words that sound like concern but taste like calculation. 2 days after the memorial, you're in the kitchen making tea when Brandon's phone buzzes on the counter. He's upstairs showering. You shouldn't look, but the screen lights up with a message from Linda. Has she checked the will yet? No question mark. Just a flat line of inquiry, as if your grief were an administrative step and your loss a ledger. You put the kettle down without pouring. Later, when Brandon comes in, you mention it casually, like asking about the weather. Your mom texted, you say. She wants to know if I've seen the will. He dries his hands on the dish towel, barely reacting. She's just being practical. You tilt your head. Is that what this is? Practical. He doesn't answer. That night, you sit on the porch with your tea, watching the dusk slide over the hills behind the cottage. Grandpa Walter used to call this time of day the blue hush. He said it was when the world took a breath and remembered itself. You look at the empty chair beside you, his chair, and your hands tighten around the mug. It's not just the text, it's everything that came before it. You start seeing it with new clarity. The time Brandon's family invited you to Thanksgiving and forgot to mention they'd changed the location. The birthday when everyone gave gifts to Tiffany but forgot you were in the room. The Easter brunch when Linda loudly asked, "So when are you two having real kids right after your second miscarriage?" You think of the Christmas you spent with them 3 years ago. Tiffany got a diamond necklace. You got a mug that said, "I'd rather be sleeping." At the time you laughed, you told yourself not to be sensitive. Now the mug feels like prophecy. You open your email and find a message from your grandpa's attorney, a man named Michael Franks. The subject line, Walter Bennett, estate documents. Your stomach tightens not because you're curious about the money, but because you know this is the moment everything begins to shift. You don't open it. Not yet. You're not ready to step into the next storm. The next morning, Tiffany shows up unannounced. She's holding a box of gluten-free muffins and wearing a sweatshirt that says, Vibes. Her smile is wide and rehearsed. Thought you might be tired of cooking, she says, stepping inside without waiting. She sits at the kitchen island like she owns it. Her eyes scan the counters, the shelves, the glass jar where Grandpa used to keep his sugar cubes. She asks about the garden, about your job, about how Brand's holding up, but you can tell what she's really doing. She's looking for cracks. Then, as casually as weather, she says, "So any idea if the cottage is staying in your name, or is it part of the family trust?" The words come out sugar-coated, but the fork in her hand pauses midair. You smile just enough to make her uncomfortable. "I haven't opened the will," you say. "I'm still mourning." Tiffany's lips twitch. Of course, of course. She finishes her muffin and leaves 15 minutes later. No hug, no goodbye, just a faint scent of expensive perfume trailing behind her, like smoke after a fire. That evening, Brandon suggests you host his family again for dinner. He says they want to help you sort through things, maybe take some of Grandpa's books to make room. You ask him which books Tiffany has ever read. He doesn't answer. You go to bed with a pounding behind your eyes. At 2 in the morning, you get up and go into Grandpa's office. The room smells like cedar and dust and faint tobacco from the pipe he quit 10 years ago but never threw away. His chair is still warm in your memory, though the cushion is cold now. You kneel beside the bookshelf, the same one he built with dowels and glue in the garage. Third shelf, gardening manuals. You pull one at random, the spine cracked, the corners curled. Inside, in the fold between pages, you find something unexpected. A small piece of paper, tucked between the chapters on compost and pruning. It's not the will, it's a note, handwritten in his square, steady print. "I know what they are, I know who you are, as keep the house, keep the garden. They never earned it." You did. You sit on the floor for a long time, that note in your lap. And for the first time in days, your grief doesn't feel like drowning. It feels like permission. Morning comes slowly, like it doesn't want to intrude. The sky over the hills blushes pale orange, and the kitchen fills with the faint smell of chamomile from a tea bag you forgot to throw away last night. You hold Grandpa Walter's note in your hand, the paper slightly wrinkled from where your thumb pressed too long, over the word earned. You place it inside the old gardening book again, careful to return it exactly where you found it, like it belongs there, like a seed that might still bloom later. That day you drive to the cottage. Not the house you shared with Brandon, but the place where you spent every summer from age 6 to 20 running barefoot through tomato vines and tracking dirt inside. Even when Grandpa told you not to, the same place you came back to 3 months ago when he called and simply said, "It's time, kid. I need help with the bees." The cottage is humble, white shutters, a stone path lined with rosemary and fading geraniums. Brandon always referred to it as that shack, but you saw it differently. You still do. It's a refuge, a memory with a roof. Ush. Inside, everything remains untouched. His chair by the window, the coffee can he reused for nails, the photo of you at 9 years old, missing your front teeth, standing beside a pumpkin nearly as big as your body. Grandpa had drawn a crown on your head with a blue marker, Queen of the Crop. You sit at his desk, the one made of thick oak, its surface etched with decades of gardening notes and coffee rings. You open the drawer. That's when you see the envelope. It's cream-colored, heavier than usual, and your name is written in black fountain pen. Elise underlined once. You stare at it. You don't open it immediately. You just hold it. Feel its weight. Feel the breath you're holding in your chest. Then you break the seal. Inside is a letter dated 3 months before his passing. Long, deliberate, and deeply Walter. My girl, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And if I know you, you're not crying, you're fuming, you're cleaning my tools, you're drinking too much black coffee. Let me say something clearly. I didn't leave you because I wanted to, but I did leave you something more important than money. I left you the freedom to never again ask permission to matter. You mattered to me the second your mother left. And I saw those scared eyes in that booster seat. You were mine to raise, mine to believe in, mine to brag about. And believe me, I bragged. You think I talked about the zucchini harvest at that diner every Thursday? No. I talked about how you fixed your own flat tire, aced statistics, told your boss he couldn't speak to you like that. I saw the way Brandon's folks looked through you. I hated it. But I also knew you'd learn to see through them too eventually. The house is yours. The garden too. There's more in the will, yes. Michael will walk you through it. But don't give a damn about their whispers or entitlement. You're the only person who ever offered me love with nothing attached. They'll show up now like mold on old bread. Let them. Just remember, some people come for the garden. Others just come for the fruit. Keep the gates locked. Keep your back straight. And if you ever feel lost, dig. The answers are always just under the surface. And love you till the dirt closes, Walter. You fold the letter gently. It doesn't feel like a goodbye. It feels like an anchor. That evening, you cook dinner alone in the cottage. Stir-fried kale with lemon and garlic, his favorite. You play Sinatra on the record player, and when the lavender light slants across the wooden floorboards, you close your eyes and whisper, "I'm still here." The next day, you open the email from Michael Franks. It's not long, just enough. Grandpa's assets were modest: the cottage, the garden plot, a few thousand in savings, and a detailed will reviewed and updated just 6 weeks before his death. Everything goes to you. No contingencies, no loopholes, no mentions of Brandon or his family. You reread the sentence twice. At Walter J. Bennett leave full ownership of property, land, personal belongings, and financial holdings to my granddaughter, Elise Marie Bennett, whose hands tilled my soil and whose care never faltered. You close your laptop. Your hands shake not from greed, not from power, but from the quiet validation you never realized you needed this badly. You think about the last dinner you had with Brandon's family. It was Tiffany's birthday. They ordered sushi and opened a bottle of wine too expensive to pronounce. You brought a lemon tart from the bakery near the garden center, Grandpa's favorite. No one touched it. Linda made a face and asked, "Is that gluten-free?" Now you realize that lemon tart was for you and Walter, not for them. You leave the cottage door open that night. Let the wind pass through. You sit on the porch with his letter and the stars letting both keep you company. Then the texts begin. Brandon, "Hey, when are we meeting the lawyer Tiffany Hurd? Grandpa left you everything." "Is that true, Linda Elise? It's time we had a mature conversation. We're family." You ignore them all. The next afternoon, Brandon shows up. He's holding a pizza box and a nervous smile. You don't invite him in. "I just want to talk," he says, setting the box down on the porch table. You glance at the label. Sausage and mushroom. You're vegetarian. He sits anyway. Begins casually. How you're coping. How his parents are concerned. Then he brings up the will. "I mean, it makes sense that you get the place," he says, "but maybe there's a way we can make it fair." You raise an eyebrow. "Fair? Like Tiffany's been struggling since her studio closed." Mom and Dad helped Walter with groceries last year. No, you interrupt. They dropped off a casserole and made him feel like a burden for eating it. He says nothing. You lean back, let the silence speak for you. After a while, Brandon stands. Just don't forget who was there for you, he says, voice tight. You don't reply because you remember exactly who was there, and it sure as hell wasn't him. That night, you take the gardening book, the letter, and the will, and you lock them in Grandpa's old filing cabinet. Then you close your eyes and sleep deeper than you have in weeks. Because for the first time, you're not clinging to a memory, you're living inside one. You don't hear from Brandon for 4 days. Not a text, not a missed call, no sign of Tiffany or Linda either. You almost believe the silence is real, but on the fifth morning, you open your front door and find them standing there. All of them. Linda in a pressed linen blouse, Tiffany in designer sunglasses, Charles lingering awkwardly behind with a manila folder clutched to his chest. Brandon's there too, looking like someone forced him into a tie. May we come in? Linda asks, as if this were a casual brunch and not an ambush. You stare at them for a long beat before stepping aside, not because you want them in your home, but because you want them to see what a home actually looks like. Inside the cottage smells of rosemary and fresh bread. You spent the morning baking a sourdough loaf from Walter's old recipe. It's still warm on the counter. You don't offer them any. They sit around the wooden table, Walter's table, the one he sanded by hand after a storm, split the old oak in the backyard. You remain standing. Tiffany is the first to speak. We just wanted to open a conversation, she says, smoothing her skirt. Linda nods. It's been a difficult time for everyone, Elise. We understand you're grieving, but we also believe this transition can be handled fairly. That word again. Brandon clears his throat. We talked about it, and we think maybe it's best if there's a redistribution. Not everything, of course, just redistribution of what you ask. Linda offers a tight smile. Of the inheritance. You walk over to the bookshelf, pull out Walter's gardening journal, and set it on the table. Do you know what this is? You ask. They shake their heads. You open to the page where the letter was hidden, now empty but marked with a pressed violet. He wrote me a letter, you say softly, not just a legal document. A letter about who he trusted, about who earned what. Charles shifts in his seat. We're not contesting that he loved you. We just think that as family. Family, you interrupt. When was the last time you called him, visited, sat with him? When he was sick? Do you even know the name of the doctor who saw him in the last month? No one answers. You lean forward, voice quiet but cutting. You didn't bring casseroles because you cared. You brought them to be seen. You came to the memorial and took selfies. You asked about zoning laws while I was burying the only man who ever made me feel safe. Tiffany's face hardens. That's unfair. What's unfair, you reply, is that you're sitting here asking for pieces of a life you never showed up for. Brandon speaks up then finally. Elise, I'm still your husband. You meet his eyes, calm and steady. Are you, or were you just Walter's grandson-in-law when it was convenient? Silence. Then Linda reaches into her bag and places something on the table. A list typed with bullet points, estimated value of the cottage, projected sale price of the back lot, suggested division of items in the home furniture, books, heirlooms. They've itemized his life. You pick up the list, read each line, then calmly fold it and slide it back toward her. No. Charles's mouth opens, then shuts again. Brandon's jaw clenches. You're being emotional. You almost laugh. No, you say. I'm being exact. Then you do something none of them expect. You walk into the next room, bring back a small wooden box, and set it on the table. It's the one Walter kept near his desk, the one labeled just in case. You open it slowly. Inside is a flash drive. You insert it into your laptop and play the audio file. It's their voices, from the last time they visited when you invited them to tea. Tiffany asking about the value of Walter's watch. Linda whispering that the old man wouldn't know if some of the silverware went missing. Charles suggesting a gentle nudge toward liquidating assets before probate. Your voice calmly asking, and what would you do with it? Tiffany, pay off some things. Help Mom and Dad. Maybe upgrade my studio. You press pause. Their faces are pale now. Charles looks ready to stand. Brandon stares at the screen like he's hoping it vanishes. Walter had taught you to document everything. After a neighbor tried to fake a property dispute over a fence line, he bought a recorder. Not because I like drama, he said, but because truth shouldn't need to shout. You let the silence stretch. Then you say, leave. Linda stands shaken. You're threatening us. You meet her gaze evenly. I'm reminding you what's real, what's recorded, what's documented, and what's no longer yours to take. They file out one by one. Brandon is the last to leave. He stops at the door, voice low. I never meant to hurt you. You nod. You just didn't mean to protect me either. He leaves without another word. You close the door behind them, locks it, and stand for a long time with your hand still on the doorknob. Then you walk to the kitchen, slice the bread, sit down at Walter's table, and eat your first meal alone. No one to impress, no one to guard against. Only the quiet, only the peace. You wake up early the next morning, not from restlessness, but from clarity. The air inside the cottage is cooler now, touched by fall. A breeze moves through the lavender outside, and for the first time in weeks, you don't feel the dull ache of anticipation, no waiting for a message, no dreading a visit. You are still. And in that stillness, you decide it's time. Time to lay it all bare. On your terms. You text Michael, your grandfather's lawyer, and ask for a meeting. In person, with witnesses. He replies almost immediately. Of course, let's do this the right way. Later that week, you walk into the wood-paneled conference room of Franks and Lynn, the kind of place where men in pressed shirts read contracts that change lives. The table is long and gleaming. At one end, Michael sits with a folder already opened, a stack of copies neatly arranged beside him. At the other, Brandon and his family are seated postured like reluctant royalty. They came dressed for business. You came dressed for weather, for soil, for the kind of truth that doesn't wrinkle or fade. Michael begins. Walter Bennett's will was updated on July 12th. It was witnessed by two of our paralegals, notarized the same day. No changes have been made since. He pauses. It names Elise Marie Bennett as the sole beneficiary of all assets, real estate, financial accounts, physical property, and personal effects. No one speaks, not at first. Then Linda scoffs. Surely there's something for the rest of the family. Michael glances at you, then answers calmly. No, Mr. Bennett was clear and intentional in his decision. Tiffany shifts in her chair. But Elise she's not even blood. You smile gently, and you think you are, Michael continues. In addition, there's a signed letter Walter requested be read aloud at this meeting. He picks up the paper, clears his throat. To those gathered, if you are hearing this, it means I've passed. And Elise has chosen to allow this moment. First, let me say plainly, I'm not confused. I was not coerced. I've seen more clearly and in my old age than most see in their prime. I watched who visited me and who didn't. I watched who helped Elise carry groceries when her back hurt. I watched who brought her pie after a miscarriage and who asked about resale value on my home. I watched who sat on the porch with me, no phone in sight, and who asked how much the land was worth. I chose her, because she chose me when I had nothing left to offer but time. You close your eyes as the words settle like dust. If you feel slighted, ask yourself, what did you plant here? What did you tend? What did you leave behind other than expectation? Michael finishes reading, silence again. This time it's not awkward. It's a reckoning. Charles speaks next, his voice forced calm. We'll need to review this with our own legal advisor. Michael nods. Of course, but the documents are airtight. You're welcome to challenge, but it will not go far. They stand. No more arguments. No more pleasantries. Just bruised ego masquerading as dignity. Brandon lingers for a moment. He looks older than he did 2 weeks ago. Tired. Unmoored. He says you win. And you say without flinching, it wasn't a contest, it was a life. When they're gone, Michael turns to you. I've seen families come apart for far less, but I've never seen one so clearly draw the line between blood and love. You nod, you thank him, and you leave with the letter folded neatly in your coat pocket. You drive home without music, just the sound of tires over gravel and the wind pressing against glass. When you return to the cottage, you find the garden overrun with clover. You kneel down and begin pulling weeds gently, patiently, like Walter used to show you. You speak to the soil. We did it, didn't we? The sun dips low behind the trees, bathing the cottage in honey gold. Inside the kettle whistles, you ignore it for a minute, just to listen to the wind, just to be certain that no one else is coming. Because for the first time in your adult life, you are not waiting to be chosen. You were already chosen, and now you choose yourself. A week passes, you don't hear from Brandon. Not a knock, not a call, not even a forwarded email out of habit. The silence no longer feels sharp, it feels earned. Then one morning you receive a formal envelope in the mailbox, not from him, but from Charles and Linda, typed businesslike with legal letterhead. It reads, "We believe Elise Bennett acted in undue influence and failed to inform the family of key estate decisions. We request a reevaluation of asset distribution, or we will be forced to consider further action." You laugh, not out loud, not mockingly, just a soft exhale of disbelief. They still don't understand. You scan the letter and send it to Michael. He replies within the hour. Ignore them. They have no legal standing and they know it. But if they escalate, we'll be ready. You sit with that line for a while. We'll be ready. That evening, you visit the shed. Walter always called it the reading room, even though it was barely insulated and the roof leaked. But it was where he went to think, to write, to tinker. And when you step inside, the smell of cedar soil and turpentine greets you like an old friend. You find a box on the shelf labeled "Letters Never Mailed." Inside, dozens of envelopes, some yellowed, some sealed, most not. One catches your eye. It's addressed to Brandon, dated 2 years ago. You read it. Brandon, she deserves better. I see it. Maybe you don't, but she does. You talk about loyalty, but loyalty isn't showing up when the camera's on. It's making her tea without being asked. It's standing beside her when she's wrong, then helping her be right again. You're losing her in increments, and someday she'll notice. She has your last name. You should try earning it. Walter, you fold it carefully and return it to the box. You don't need to show it to anyone. Some truths aren't for battles, they're for closure. Back at the house, you bake a pie. Not because anyone's visiting, not because you're grieving, just because you want to. You eat a slice on the porch, bare feet up on the rail, watching the sky turn dark blue with hints of silver. The garden rustles. A deer walks past the rosemary, unbothered by your presence. You think of your mother gone so long, now she feels like folklore. Of the women in your family, some who fled, some who stayed too long. You wonder what kind of woman you're becoming now, that no one is writing that story but you. Later, as you wash the pie dish, your phone buzzes, a text from an unknown number. "I heard what happened. I'm sorry, you did the right thing." Tiffany, you stare at it, not because you forgive her, but because something about that message feels unguarded, like a door creaked open in a hallway you'd long since boarded shut. You don't reply, but you don't block her either. The next day, Michael calls, calm but deliberate. They filed a petition to contest the will. You feel nothing. He continues, "I'm filing a dismissal. It won't go far, but just be aware they're not finished." You walk out into the garden holding the phone in one hand and Walter's letter in the other. They were never family, you tell him quietly. They were just visitors who stayed too long. That weekend, you host a gathering, not for Brandon's family, not for appearances. You invite the people who matter, Melinda and her wife, Kevin the mailman, Mrs. Hollis from the post office, your old professor from community college, people who'd brought you soup when you were sick, people who'd shown up with mismatched chairs to Walter's memorial just so everyone could sit. You cook, you laugh. You open windows and let the smell of cinnamon and sage drift out into the yard. And when the sun begins to dip, you walk out to the garden and plant a new lavender bush in the center of the old one. No speeches, no big gestures, just dirt and hands and presence. Later that night, you find a letter in your inbox from Brandon. It's not angry, it's not apologetic either, it's neutral. "Just thought you should know Dad's dropping the case. They realized you're not bluffing. I'm moving out of my parents' place. I won't contact you again unless you want me to, Miss, take care, Brandon." You delete it, not out of spite, but because the chapter is finished. You already closed the book. You just never told anyone. That night, you water the lavender, Feed the cat who's been circling your porch for days. Light the lamp Walter carved with his initials, and as you sit in his old chair book and lap tea steeping beside you, you hear nothing. No footsteps, no doors, just quiet. And it finally feels like peace. The mornings come softer now, no alarm, no half-heard footsteps pacing across hardwood floors in passive-aggressive silence, no tense breakfast with eggs going cold while you wait for someone to ask if you're okay. Just sunlight. It spills through the cottage window in long, quiet stretches, the kind Walter used to call God's sigh. You wake slowly, arms wrapped in a quilt he stitched together from old shirts, some of them yours from childhood. You stretch pressed bare feet to warm wood and make your way to the kitchen. There's no rush anymore. You grind coffee by hand, not for efficiency, but for the rhythm. You water the potted basil, open the window above the sink, and let the breeze sweep through. It carries lavender and rosemary, but also a scent harder to name, something like honesty. The garden waits. You pull on boots and a denim jacket and walk out into the crisp light. The clover is under control now. The soil is darker, richer. The lavender bushes have spread. You see bees already circling low, unbothered by your presence. There's something sacred about being watched by creatures that do not care who you once were, only that you bloom now. You kneel beside the newest row and gently pull a weed free. The earth gives easily. You whisper, "Good morning, old man." And for a moment, it's almost like you hear him chuckle. The mailbox creaks. You walk over and find a single envelope, no return address. Inside is a card, not store-bought, handmade, paper thick and textured. A child's handwriting unmistakable. "Thank you for sharing the garden with us, Miss Elise. I told my mom I want to grow purple flowers like yours. She said okay. Lila, age 7. You smile. You place the card beside Walter's old compass on the bookshelf. The needle still spins true north, though it trembles like everything that's been held too tightly for too long. You spend the afternoon teaching Lila and 2 other neighborhood kids how to plant beans in paper cups. They laugh when the dirt gets under their nails. They race to water the rosemary, nearly drowning it with affection. You don't stop them. Some things survive because of love, not science. When they leave, you sit on the steps, hands dirty, heart strangely clean. You think of your mother. You think of Tiffany, of all the women in your family line who were told to stay quiet, stay small, stay grateful. You didn't, and you never will, again. Later that week, you meet Michael to finalize the foundation Walter requested you build. It's small but steady, a program for teens to learn gardening and practical life skills, budgeting, basic carpentry, simple cooking. You name it, the Bennett Root Project. You know, Michael says as he signs the final document, most people in your position would have sold the property and disappeared. You shrug. Walter didn't raise me to run, he raised me to restore. On the 1-year anniversary of his death, you hold a small remembrance. No social media. No announcements, just an open gate, a thermos of black coffee, and a notebook. People come, not many, but enough. Kevin brings a folding chair and reads a poem. Melinda brings lemon bars and wipes her eyes behind sunglasses. Lila brings a single sprig of lavender and places it in a mason jar on the porch. You don't speak much, but you don't have to. Everyone who matters already understands. After the guests leave, you sit on the porch until dusk. You open Walter's gardening book, now filled with new entries in your handwriting. You trace your fingers over the old notes tips on composting, weather patterns, and aphorisms like weeds are just flowers with bad press. You remember how he once told you that lavender bloomed best when it wasn't overwatered. "Let it struggle a little," he said. "Struggle builds oil. Oil makes scent. That's what makes lavender smell like something." You watch the wind move through the stalks. They bend, but they don't break. Later, you fold laundry in the quiet, wash the coffee mugs, refill the sugar tin, set a pot of beans to simmer. The silence doesn't ache anymore. It sings. You open the back door and let the night in. You close your eyes and you don't see the people who left. You see the ones who stayed. You see Walter, his crooked grin, his work-worn hands, his steady faith in you. And for the first time in your life, you realize you didn't just survive them. You outgrew them. You outlived their expectations. You planted yourself, and you stayed. In the silence he left behind, you didn't just rebuild, you rose. Some stories end with noise, but this one ends with quiet, the kind of quiet that only comes after you've reclaimed your voice. In a world where inheritance is often mistaken for entitlement, where family becomes a mask worn only at the reading of a will, she chose a different legacy. not one of money, but of meaning, of lavender that still blooms, of a truth whispered, recorded, planted, and never uprooted. As Viktor Frankl once said, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. That's what she did, not with vengeance, but with values. She didn't just bury a man she loved. She buried the illusions others tried to sell her and walked away with something they'll never touch: peace. If this story touched you, leave a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. Share your reflections or your own moment of quiet strength. Subscribe to Revenge Stories 94 for more stories like this. We don't just tell revenge, we tell rebirth.